people from several nations around the world who are all holding in common the experience of occupation. And we are pleased to have here several panelists who will speak on each nation's issue. To my right, we have Mr. Vaiko. Vaiko is from Tamil Nadu, a former member of parliament, and has served 6 terms over 25 years in Tamil Nadu. He's the current General Secretary of the MDMK party, has been a strong supporter of Eelam Tamils for decades, and has made personal sacrifices on their behalf. So we are pleased to have him here. To my extreme left, we have Mr. Nasser Obaid. Mr. Obaid is a human rights activist from South Yemen. To my immediate left is Professor Naila Qadri, known as the Iron Lady of Balochistan. She's a strong advocate for Balochi women and is president of the World Balochi Females Forum. On my extreme right, we have Mr. Josh. We have Mr. Halan Josh. He represents the Kurdistan regional government in the Erbil Provincial Council, member of the Referendum Commission, and of course we have the particular honor to have him here just a few days before the referendum that will be held in Iraqi Kurdistan on September 25th. We are very thankful that you are here, and we wish you the best of luck. Mr. George will be speaking in Kurdish, and translation will be offered into English. On Channel 2, all right. So to begin, we turn to Ms. Rayan, and we will be hearing about the situation in Palestine.
Assalamu alaikum, peace upon you all. I'm going to speak about the human rights in Palestine, which is occupied since 1948. So it's around 70 years, and it's a really complicated issue. So I'm not going to speak at the whole issue. I'm going just to speak about to focus on the children rights. Because they are suffering the worst forms of separation, deprivation, and misery and displacement. They are depriving us to the most basic rights as well, even the right of life, and resulting in loss the security and the protection and the safe living. The children were the main victims of the Israeli oppression and racism, which has violated all international conventions such as the La Haye and the Geneva Convention, and related to protection rights and needs of the child. The present age of the children in Palestine, it's among for 18 years old. There are more than 30% of the whole Palestinian people. So they are really the future of the Palestine, and we are speaking about a big number of the and a big a big slice of the Palestinian. It's really the future of Palestine. And the victims of armed conflict and violence practiced by the Israeli occupation where extremist settlers practiced the most egregious crimes against the childhood. And we all remember the Wabisha family, which was burning alive, and it was just one child who was only 5 years old who was alive, who's still alive. And we are all remember Ahmed al-Manasira. He is only 14 years old, and he was sentenced to 12 years in prison, even if he's only a child. And Shadi Farah also as well, the youngest detained and of the other children. And he's still behind the Israeli prisons. I'm not going to speak a lot of issues about the Palestinians' rights, because I think it's really clear, and I will just conclude and will say I think a lot of people here have children. Just think about the Palestinian children who are living since 70 years old or for 70 years old under the occupation, and they don't have even the right to life. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Now we will turn to Mr. Weichel.
Respected moderator, Mr. Lorenzo Carito, and the other dignitaries who are in the panel list. It is a privilege given to me to participate in this purposeful discussion under the caption Nations Under Occupation. Tamil Eelam, the north and east provinces of that island, have been put under occupations for more than 3 centuries, nearly 3 centuries. Till the Portuguese came, Tamils had their own kingdom with a distinct culture as a cradle of ancient civilization. After the invasion of Portuguese, they fought, and in some of the battles they won and they lost. Then the Dutch came. Then the British came. During the British period, Tamils lost 7,500 square kilometer territory to the Sinhalese. Tamils is a separate nation, Sinhalese is a separate nation. From the dawn of history, Tamils are the original inhabitants of that island. And when the British left on 4th February 1948, already the Tamils have lost 7,500 square kilometers territory to the Sinhalese. Between 1948 until 1976, further 7,500 square kilometers we lost. The territory was lost to the Sinhalese. So 15,000 square kilometers territory have been aggressively captured and taken by the force of the might of the army. Now the present situation, I would like straight away come to the point. Today the Tamil areas in the north and east are under the occupation of the Sri Lankan aggressive army. More than 100,000 soldiers are stationed in the northern province. For every 5 Tamil houses, a Sinhalese soldier is standing there. And the war was conducted not by the Sinhalese. Had it been, the LTT have won the war. But India, I am ashamed to say, I come from Tamil Nadu, where 75 million Tamils are living. We have got umbilical relations for thousands of years with the Tamils of Eelam. The Indian government, in connivance with the Sinhala racist government, enabled the Sinhala government to purchase weapons from so many mighty powers, Russia, China, America, UK, and Iran. So, LTT had to fight all these forces. They were massacred. Then what happened? The banned bombs were used, cluster bombs were used, and the Tamils, more than 400,000 Tamils, were forced to come to the no-fire zones. But the no-fire zones, the so-called no-fire zones, thousands of Tamils, according to the report of the three-member panel constituted by the then Secretary General Mr. Ban Ki-moon. 137,000 Tamils were annihilated, were massacred, men, women, children, and the patients who were in the poorly arranged hospitals. Hospitals were not spared. The report speaks that with the authentic report I am telling, the hospitals were bombarded and the patients were killed, and thousands of Tamils have to die due to starvation, due to hunger. Without medicines they died. Now we came to the Human Rights Council. I would like to bring to my brothers and sisters who have come from Kurdistan, Western Sahara, Palestine, South Yemen, Balochistan. I am pained to point out we craved for justice from United Nations and Human Rights Council. Germany with the other 16 countries moved a resolution to convene an urgent special session of the Human Rights Council in the aftermath of the brutal massacre of Mulli Vaikal on 18th May 2009. So the Human Rights Council convened the urgent session the last week of May 2009. I am terribly pained to say a resolution was adopted which was sponsored by Cuba, India and Bolivia, commending the role of the racist regime headed by the butcher of Tamils, Mr. Mahinda Rajapaksa. It never happened in the Human Rights Council history. It never happened in the history of the United Nations. Instead of condemning and seeking justice, they adopted a resolution commending the role of the racist government. So we have become orphans, international orphans. Where we could go? The years of the UN, the years of the Human Rights Council have become deaf. Their eyes have become blind. Even then, a resolution as a conspiracy, United States moved the resolution, India supported the resolution was adopted in 2015, resolution number 30/1. But according to that resolution, a meaningless resolution, even that resolution has not been implemented. That is why I say today the Tamil areas have become an occupied territory of the Sri Lankan armed forces. Sri Lanka voluntarily co-sponsored this resolution and committed to fully implement the requirements of the resolution by March 2017. Extension and grace periods have been already given, but no progress, not even an inch, has been moved on any front. The only way to protect the Eelam Tamils in Sri Lanka, to liberate from the occupied area and give justice and safety to them, is for the UN Human Rights Council to refer Sri Lanka to the UN General Assembly, along with a recommendation to the UN Security Council that Sri Lanka be referred to the International Criminal Court and that an ad hoc International Criminal Tribunal be created on Sri Lanka similar to the procedure followed to assure accountability for North Korea's crimes against humanity. So we are an occupied nation. We have a nation for thousands of years. Today we have become an occupied territory, occupied nation by the armed forces. Armed struggle is the only option. Many countries, many races, many nationalities have opted for armed struggle to win the battles, but here 7 mighty military nuclear powers joined together to suppress our Tamils. But one day, we are very firm. Our Tamils have sacrificed. 19 Tamils committed self-immolation embracing the flames of death. One youth, aged 28, Murugadasa, committed self-immolation just in front of this Human Rights Council. Just in front of this Human Rights Council. Where to get justice for us? But we have not lost hope. We will fight through peaceful means. We will raise our voice to reach the people who are really concerned about the human rights, who are really concerned about nationalities, like you people you have gathered here. I don't want to take much of the time of this panel. At the same time, I extend my congratulations and best wishes to Mr. Alan Georges to win the referendum. That will be the happiest day for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vaiko. We now turn the floor to Mr. Georges, representing Iraqi Kurdistan.
زۆر سوپاستان دەکەین سوپاسی ئامادەبوون دەکەین کێشەی گەلی کوردستان بە شێوەیەکی سەرەکی لە پاش شەڕی جیهانی یەکەم سوپاستان دەکەین کێشەی گەلی کوردستان بە شێوەیەکی سەرەکی لە پاش شەڕی جیهانی یەکەم دەستی پێکرد.
The Kurdish problem became more visible in particular after the First World War and the Sykes-Picot Agreement, which divided the Kurdish territory between Iraq, Iran, Turkey and Syria. These agreements have only brought misfortune to the Kurdish people, who have never stopped fighting for their identity. Till today, the Kurds have been oppressed in these 4 countries. For example, their identity cards were withdrawn in Syria. And in Turkey, Kurds could not express themselves in their mother tongue until 1991. And Iran, the Kurdish towns are not more developed than villages and are still in a stage basic agriculture, and the situation is even worse in Iran and in Syria. In Iraq, successive regimes have always denied the Kurdish identity, going so far as to refuse the recognition of Kurdistan as a territory. So the Kurdish people have been fighting for a century in this country to obtain their legitimate rights and protect their identity. The history of the misfortune of the Kurdish people in Iraq is interminable, since the monarchical regime and the republic, especially under the bloody regime of Baas. The bloody regime of Baas and Saddam Hussein. Under the Baas regime, and only in the 1980s, 182,000 Kurds perished in the process named Anfal, and more than 8,000 Barzani were massacred. And more than 5,000 civilians were perished in Halabja Ghazi fight, and more than 10,000 were injured. These are huge crimes against an innocent nation, and they were born Kurdish, and they have Kurdish identity. more than 4,500 Kurdish villages were wiped off the map, and their population were deported as the failed Kurds. After the invasion of Kuwait and the partial fall of the Ba'ath regime in 1991, the Kurdish people rose up against the regime so that the Kurds would no longer be victims of atrocities, and in order to build a civilian community and protect its rights in Iraq, in a new Iraq. Thus, the Parliament of Kurdistan was set up on the 19th of May 1992 with the government. Thus, Kurdistan and its capital Erbil have become a place where Saddam Hussein's opponent taking actions in order to fall down Saddam Hussein's regime. But these opponents, who have worked in parallel with the Kurds since 1991, now are political leaders in Iraq and oppose firmly and fight Kurds and deny the Kurdish rights in Iraq since the fall of Saddam Hussein in 2003. After the fall of the Ba'ath regime in 2003, the Kurds have a great hope for the construction of a democratic Iraq in which they could live in peace and fraternity with the Arabs and write their rights in the new constitution, and to live together with other ethnic and religious minorities without any problem. Thus, in 2005, the Kurds approved the new Iraqi constitution in the hope of a new life in the framework of a new Iraq. But unfortunately, those who claim to want to build a new Iraq and defend the rights of all minorities now firmly oppose the rights of the Kurds and violate the constitution, cut the budget of Kurdistan officials, and they deny the application of the Article 140 of the Iraqi constitution concerning the Kurdish region detached from Kurdistan and whose inhabitants also wish to be attached to Kurdistan. And Iraqi political leaders violate the rights of the Kurdish Peshmerga, and even worse, consider them as militias. Whereas it's these Peshmergas that effectively carry out the war against the terrorists of Daesh in the name of the whole world. However, the Iraqi parliament approved in just 2 hours of deliberation the establishment of an army known as Hashd al-Shabi and recognized it as a part of Iraqi army, official Iraqi army. The Baghdad government has violated more than 50 articles of the constitution regarding the rights of the Kurds and other ethnic minorities. For example, Article 162, which provides that the budget of Iraq must be distributed to all provinces and cities equally. and they have also violated the Article 111 and 112 concerning the distribution of natural resources, and Iraqi politicians use their majority in parliament to violate the rights of the minorities such as Kurds, Assyrians, Christians, Chaldeans. Current Iraq is not a country of rights at all. It's a state based on tribal and religious allegiance and whose policy is dictated by Iran. Minorities have virtually no rights and cannot even defend their identity in parliament. Besides, after the invasion of Daesh and the massacre of the Yazidis and the Christians and the reduction of women to slavery, this shows this behavior of Daesh belongs to the all ages and showed the current Iraqi mentality. The right to self-determination of the Kurdish people is not something new. It finds its foundation in the four prerogatives of the President of the United States, Wilson, who founded the League of Nations after the Second World War. The self-determination of Kurdistan finds its foundation also in all the agreements of the United Nations concerning the right to the self-determination of any nation in the world. The leadership of Kurdistan now has decided a referendum in the 25th of September 2017. The purpose of this referendum is to determine the political future of the Kurdish people. The Kurdish people in Iraq will decide if they want to stay with Iraq or they want to claim their independence. This is a legitimate right for any people in the world, any nation in the world. Other nations such as the Kosovars and the East Timor have recently used this right to self-determination and have lived in peace ever since and have no problem. We, the Kurds, we want to show a good example of democracy to the world, and we want to defend our identity, which has been repressed for decades. The referendum of the Kurdish people is not a threat to any people or any nation in the world. On the contrary, we believe that the referendum will constitute a factor of stability for the region, and the new Kurdistan will become an example of living together for the region and for the whole world. And we hope that the United Nations and the international community will support us. And we are kindly asking you to support us, to support our referendum, to support our right to self-determination. And thank you very much. Thank you very much for listening, and we are waiting for your support.
Thank you very much, Mr. George. We will now turn to Ms. Naila Qadri. excuse me. We will turn to Mr. Halan George, and I apologize for the mistaken introduction at the beginning. So this will now be Mr. Nasser Obaid.
Thanks. Okay. By the way, I'm Nasser Obaid from south of Yemen, coming from Germany to represent the south part of Yemen. Actually, I didn't plan to be here today. Our friends. Now she's stuck in the airport. Maybe she will come after 5 minutes, 10 minutes, I don't know. But by the way, I would like to share with you a summary about the situation in south of Yemen, the southern issue, and also I would like to share with you some facts and figures since 1994, so what's happening in the south. So as a summary, on the 22nd May 1990, the People's Democratic Republic of Yemen, the south, and the Yemen Arab Republic, the north, agreed to enter into a unity agreement. Prior to this agreement, both states were fully independent before 1990. Shortly following the unification, an apparently hidden northern agenda to take over control of the south began with the campaign of assassination against the southern leaders. The ruling northern establishment, including the tribe, the military, and the extreme Islamist groups, conspired to effect the complete takeover of the south. In 1994, the northern ruling establishment finally waged their war against the south and fully occupying it on the 7th July 1994. Following the occupation, tens of thousands of Southern were dismissed from their jobs in the military, police, and other civil services. Southern resources were divided up between the war victors, and vast area of land were gifted to corrupt tribal chiefs, military, and other extremist groups. An increase in discriminatory and oppression, coupled with deliberated attack on the southern identity, resulted in a rise southern anti-northern systematic. Southern demands equally and an end to the corruption taken place, but such demands were ignored. Faced with this situation, Southern began their peaceful movement known as Al-Hirak. The movement represented the desire of the Southern people to break away from the unity agreement and re-establishment of the independent Southern state as the only way to regain the identity and the freedom of the Southerns. The second invasion of the South in 2015, before 2 years, by the Houthis Saleh coalition, reinforced the Southern desire and resolve to take steps to break away has never been stronger. The establishment of the Southern Transitional Council in 2017 is the step which was necessary to turn the popular resolve into a political one, and the next few months will determine how the Southern future will be shaped. Now, I will also, in summary, I would like to just give you some information as a summary about the facts and figures since 1994. So, over 3,000 Southerns killed, and over also 6,000 injured and 1,000 detained. More than 100,000 Southerns dismissed from their jobs in military and other civil services. Around 26 ministry buildings taken over and contents stolen. Around 44 government agencies taken over and contents stolen. Around 39 factories taken over by the corrupted Northerns. So also a wide area, land area, vast area, so also were gifted and stolen from the Southerns. So what we are doing also, you could also see some films, videos now. So the Southerns still working hard as activists till we get our rights for self-determination. We are not hurry to get the self-determination tomorrow or in a month. We are working hard to get our rights for self-determination even after 4 years. And we are surprised why some other Europe countries ignore our rights for our self-determination, and every time they say we are supporting the unity of Yemen, while they give the chance to other countries like what's happened in Britain, Scotland. So thanks a lot, and if you have questions, I will happy to answer to you. Thanks a lot.
So I'd like to say thank you very much to each of the panelists for your contributions, and we have just over 10 minutes for questions. I see a hand up. I'm sorry. I see a hand up in the back.
Thank you for this seminar. I have a question for Palestine and Yemen. As everyone knows, the Iranian regime in the whole world is protecting and leading terrorism. And in one hand, the Iranian regime protects and supports both economically and military the Hezbollah, Hamas, and Houthis in Yemen. And this is so clear that it's not needed to give a document. It's so clear. I think that these people in Palestine and Yemen, they have to make a great report about Iranian regime, and they have to say this, that the Iran regime is the main reason for this war situation in Yemen and Palestine. I want to just say this, that you have to point this point, and you have to say this, and it's not needed to be ignored. Thank you.
So if you are speaking about the occupation of Palestine, so we are speaking about Israel, because we are occupied by Israel and not by Iran. Even if I am self against the politics of Iran, and I know that she has a lot of that it has a lot of terrorists. Yes, but it's something politics. It's not about human rights. So that's why I am specialized to speak about human rights, and that's why I'm going to speak about the issues of occupation. Even if it's about even if Iran helped Hamas or some other terrorist groups.
So maybe I will add because. Maybe the question is about Yemen and what's Iran doing in Yemen. So before 2015, actually before also 2015 and many years early, so Iran tried at the beginning to support Houthis group. Yeah, and so I still remember they sent flight to Yemen. 2 flights, so just they assigned a contract and they sent in 2 flights in Yemen per day. So no one will travel from Iran to Sana'a in 2 flights, yeah, and also return back. So before we didn't have any flights between Iran and Sana'a. Actually, they were sending some weapons to Yemen. And so what's happening in Yemen now? One of the reasons, so Iran's tried to play in Yemen, and they use Houthis group to just to destroy Yemen. We can say this. Thank you.
We have a question from Mr. Ponamano.
My question is actually to Mr. Georges.
Unfortunately, he must leave for another panel immediately. I apologize for that. If you would like, you could ask the question.
Well, it's ideally to him, but if the panel can enlighten, the Tamil nation in the island of Sri Lanka is facing this issue of how to express our will with regards to our political future. And the reason for that being that Sri Lanka, since the early 80s, has explicitly made illegal, both indirectly and directly or indirectly espousing the cause for a separate state. But we also know that what is fundamental is the right to self-determination of peoples. So the Tamil nation is caught in this conundrum of wanting to express and realize their right to self-determination, inclusive of the right to a separate state if need be. But you have this law that specifically outlaws any such espousal. So I was wondering how one might be able to get around that, because on the one hand you can make the case that espousing the right to self-determination is a fundamental right in democracy, in the practice of democracy. If so, then how can you phrase it? You know, what is the approach, so that we don't get caught into this reactionary clause that is found in every single Sri Lankan constitution, and we shall continue to the future.
Thank you, Mr. Ponambalam. So just in lieu of an answer from the representative from Iraqi Kurdistan, I will offer a couple of very general remarks. That first of all, it's important that we recognize in this forum that the League of Nations and the United Nations both have been set up with the core principle of the right to self-determination. Without this principle, without respect for this principle, this calls the entire international system into question. So the forums that we are speaking at here must understand that the right to self-determination, which this panel is speaking about, is at the core of the international system. The second thing, I would offer the comparison with the situation in Sri Lanka and the situation in Iraq. That while Sri Lanka has emerged from the conflict as a much strengthened state, Iraq has not. And I believe that this may contribute to some of the dissimilarities in our situations. I have a question here.
Yeah. I just want to make a comment. My name is Manivandan Patnaban. I am from Trans-Asia Government of Eelam, which is representing Tamils throughout the world, Eelam Tamils. And this conference has been a very what's called the solidarity basis, and then we, as far as I'm concerned, we all have to work together, because the countries which are suppressing us are working together. So like if you take it in Sri Lanka, Pakistan work together, Saudi Arabia work together, Iran, and all these, China, all these countries are working together, whereas the affected nations like us are not working together. I think in the future we should collaborate together so that we put the forward, because we all face a similar situation like disappearances, land occupation, occupied territories and all that similar situation. So we should all raise the voice together. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I have a question in the back. Yes, 5 minutes.
Hello. thank you very much for all your presentations. I'm Moara Crivalente from Brazil. I find it very interesting that you are able to organize events in a group of nations that are under occupation, and I think that these kind of efforts could move on in more practical terms also. But I would like also to come back to history a little bit, especially this year, which is a very significant year in the case of Palestine. 50 years of occupation, 100 years of colonization, and in the sense it's interesting that President Mahmoud Abbas has again called for the United Kingdom to make amends for the Balfour Declaration. So this kind of putting history on the table and talking about what led the peoples under occupation to this current situation is important, I think, together with the denunciation of the daily violation of human rights. And also, if we want to talk about the international system and what is sustaining this protracted decolonization, for instance, in the case of Morocco and Western Sahara, over 40 years that Western Sahara is under occupation, over 130 years of colonization, and the colonial power has not taken responsibility for this issue. Again, all this is important to tackle with a mention to history and to the international system that enables this situation to go on. In the case of France, Spain, the United States that all have stakes on this situation. So I would like you maybe to comment very generally. I know it's a broad issue, but if you can comment on the specific focus that we can get from tackling history, and also in the case of nations as a group, nations struggling for self-determination. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. If anyone wishes to respond within about 30 seconds.
Just I would like to add one information. We have some draft document that we are going also to send it to UN and other organization. My friend Hind will give you that, and it includes also some links for the movement videos and other documents. So I will happy to, if you will read it.
All right. So if we are out of time at this moment, I'd like to close just by saying that this was a very important panel. Certainly, I'm grateful for the opportunity to have moderated it, and I look forward to interacting with all of you during the session. Thank you.